Okay, here we have the main power switch for the system, for turning the system on and off. The extra heat switch is for giving extra heat when you need to boost the heater for instance, when you arrive home from holiday, you want to put extra heat into the system. It's a manual switch.
Can you explain to me how that works? What does it do?
It's a manual switch for increasing the hot water temperature for
as long as it's in the on position.
Yeah, correct. As long as it's in the on position, and it's a manual turn on and a manual turn off.
So by turning it off, you go back to an eco mode where you get better efficiency from the heat pump.
Okay. Next one along is our...
Is that correct?
Yes.
Right.
Next one along is our floor stat, where we have the right hand button is your on and off button. The middle one is for the time, setting the time. If we push it once, we can change the days. We push it again, we can change the hours just with up and down arrow, and push it again, we'll change the minutes.
Okay, so whatever one's flashing, you then go to the up or down arrow for increasing or decreasing, and then to reset it you push
the clock button again, takes you back to your main screen.
Right.
The left hand button is your menu button. That can change it between hand, which is a picture of a hand.
That's a manual operation.
And a picture of a clock, which is the automatic program. So generally you would leave it in the automatic clock program, and you can manually override your clock by just turning the temperature up. It will override your automatic setting for until the next setting. It'll switch back automatically to the automatic mode once it reaches temperature. You can also run it in the manual mode, which is it will stay at the set temperature 24/7 until you turn it back to automatic.
So this is the floor stat. Now this stat, it depends on each individual house a bit where this would finally be set, so it's a wee bit of trial and error as to what temperature you're going to set this for during the day and at night. Is that right?
That's correct.
So some houses may need the stat higher depending on exactly its location in the building. So some may run fine at night on 21 or 22 degrees, whereas others may need to be increased to 28 degrees. Correct?
Correct. If we push and hold the menu button for 5 seconds, it gets you into your program. There are 6 programs that we can adjust with, play with. So this one here, for instance, is set at midnight at 24 degrees. Okay, it runs right through till 7 in the morning to 20 degrees. We step it down. So basically we're trying to utilize a higher temperature at night on a cheaper night rate electricity, which is generally nearly half the price compared to the day rate.
So what you're trying to do is build up some thermomass in the slab so that you don't have to run it as much during the day.
Okay, so we can scroll through the other time settings. 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we're asking for 21 degrees. Then 5 o'clock at night, we step it down to 20 degrees. And then 1900, we step it down again to 20 degrees. At 2300, which is when cheaper night rate starts, we step it up to 24 degrees. So therefore it heats at a higher temperature from 11 at night till 7 in the morning. One push again takes you back to your main menu.
Okay. I guess the only other question is, when people do heat up the slab a bit more overnight, the temperature that this probe is reading is not necessarily the radiant temperature off the floor of the slab. So you may find your radiant temperature off the floor is in the morning sitting at 21 degrees, but this stat may be reading an actual in-slab temperature of 26 degrees. The important thing is to remember that when the room hits 21 degrees, the same as the surface temperature of the floor, no more heat comes out of the floor. Right, as far as the operation of the rest of the panel goes, can you just describe to us, Ross, what this gauge here is?
Okay, here we have a pressure temp gauge. We generally only use the pressure gauge on these systems so that we know how much pressure is in the system, which normally sits when it's running at normal pressure between 1 and 2 bar. The system, when it gets below half a bar, which is down between 0 and 1, the system does turn off or shut down just to protect itself. Okay.
That's because the pump requires pressure to lubricate the bearings.
From there we have the water pump, which has 3 speed controls on the side of it, 3, 2 and 1. From there the pump pumps the water.
Yeah, generally, which speed would you be leaving? Whatever it's been set on when the house was commissioned, best to leave it on that speed?
Yeah, generally a system would run on 2 or 3, right, depending on the size of the system. From there the water travels up through the pump, through a motorised valve, which either goes straight through to the hot water cylinder or left along to the manifolds. So this is an automatic changeover between which automatically happens from the thermostat.
So the hot water gets priority if it gets cold and it has hot water fitted, as this one does. It will switch to the hot water, and when it reaches temperature it will come back to the house.
Yep. From there we have a pressure switch which shuts the pressure down when it gets below our set point.
Stops the pump.
Then the water travels along the manifold into, we have 11 different zones here, which is, and they're normally labelled on the manifold. We can adjust the amount of flow going into each zone by turning these down, which reduces the amount of flow into each zone. Okay. Generally our main living room and kitchen and dining, where the main room thermostat is, we want to leave them on full. Okay.
So if you have a bedroom and you just want the chill off it, you're not using it, you can, when the pump is running, turn those down to get the tiniest little bit of water flow through that zone.
For instance, bedroom 2 isn't being used, so we would have that nearly closed, so basically turned it right down and then up. One turn.
If they want to shut that room off altogether, how do they do that?
Generally the easiest way to do is just to turn it down, turn
right
it off.
down to off. Okay.
Alright. From there the water flows down through the zone to the room, and then it comes back up this the return manifold.
The blue header.
The blue header. These can also be used just if we turn them down, it fully shuts the zone off, or if we turn it up, it opens the valve. So really, these are just used for turning the zone on and off only, not for adjusting the amount of heat into each zone.
Probably best to leave them on and just use the top ones to operate the system.
Correct. From there it travels along. We've got an automatic air bleeder, which automatically bleeds out any air in the system if any air enters. Underneath we have a drain fill valve for filling and draining the system when service.
So this cap, if you ever have to add water, this cap comes off here, and you put a Nilex garden fitting on, making sure that you do not have any air in your hose. The cap goes up under the valve when it's connected, and you can open that with the pressure on the hose, but you must be careful that you watch this gauge here that doesn't exceed 1.5 bar maximum when you do that, or you'll have water blowing out everywhere.
Okay, from there water travels along through a valve, and on this system we have a strainer which basically keeps removes any impurities in the system. One underneath is an expansion tank which holds the pressure in the system. As water heats it expands, and when it cools it contracts, and it all happens inside this expansion tank.
Okay, well thanks for that, Ross. There's also an explanation on the website about the best way to operate the system written up there, so you might want to look at that also. Thank you.